I knew something was wrong the moment the call disconnected without even ringing. At first, I thought it was a bad signal. I moved toward the window, tried again, and stared at the screen as the words appeared a second time. Call failed. I tried once more, slower this time, as if giving her phone a chance to forgive whatever had gone wrong. But it didn't. The call didn't even attempt to connect. It just cut off. Clean, cold, final. That's when the truth hit me. She had blocked me. My own daughter. The child I raised through sickness, exams, heartbreaks, and every ordinary moment no one else ever noticed. Blocked. I stood there holding my phone like it had betrayed me too. My hand felt heavy, like carrying a weight I hadn't prepared for. I whispered her name out loud, hoping saying it would somehow undo what she had done. But the silence around me didn't soften. It only made the blow sharper. We had argued the night before, not even about something worth cutting blood ties over. I told her I was worried about how distant she'd become since she moved in with her boyfriend. She said I was controlling. I said I was trying to protect her. Neither of us raised our voices, but the distance between us felt like a locked door. Still, I never imagined she'd erase me from her life with one tap of her thumb. I sat down at the kitchen table because my legs were shaking. I kept trying to make sense of it. Maybe she needed space. Maybe she hit the wrong button. Maybe. Then another call came in. "Is this the father of Emily Reed?" It was a nurse from a clinic I'd never heard of. She needed permission to update Emily's records. She spoke to me like it was normal, like I was still part of Emily's life. I hung up and stared at the wall. She had blocked me, but she never changed me as her emergency contact. Every school form, every medical file, every official document, my name was still sitting at the top. My number is still marked as the one to call if something happened. She hadn't replaced me. She hadn't even thought about it. And that terrified me more than the block itself. Why would she cut me out of her daily life, but leave me tied to all the moments that could save hers? Why would she silence me, but still let every system treat me as the one responsible for her safety? Unless she didn't do it herself? Unless someone else told her to? Someone who wanted her isolated? Someone who wanted her blind? Someone who wanted me out of the way? Her boyfriend's face came back to me. Not the smile he showed at family dinners, but the strange coldness I once caught when he thought I wasn't looking. A look without warmth, without roots. A look that warned me of something darker lived behind his polite words. I didn't know for sure. Not yet. But a father feels things in his bones. And in that moment, my bones told me something was pulling her away. Something she didn't fully understand. I dialed her number. Again, even though I knew it wouldn't work. Blocked. Every attempt was a new cut. I leaned back in my chair, breathing slowly, trying not to crumble under the truth settling over me. My daughter hadn't just shut me out. She had forgotten that I was the one meant to protect her when the world fell apart. And if she had forgotten that, maybe someone wanted her to forget. Tell me, what would you do if your own child erased you with a single tap? The last time my daughter spoke to me without anger in her voice wasn't a special moment. It wasn't a birthday, a holiday, or some milestone that should have stayed bright in my memory. It was a plain Tuesday evening, the kind of day you forget unless life later teaches you that it mattered more than you knew. She had called to tell me she made it home safely after work. Just that. Nothing dramatic. Her voice was soft, a little tired, but warm the way it used to be. She told me about a coworker who brought in donuts and laughed when I teased her about never bringing any to me. I remember the way she said, "Next time, Dad, I promise. If I had known it would be the last time she spoke to me like that, I would have stayed on the phone longer. I would have asked her more questions. I would have listened to the small things she shared. The things that now feel like tiny pieces of a life I'd lost without realizing it. But back then, everything still felt normal. Or at least close enough that I didn't worry. Things changed a few weeks later when she told me she was seeing someone new. She said his name quickly, almost like it didn't matter. And I didn't push for details. I didn't want to scare her off or seem overprotective. I was just happy she sounded excited. But as time went on, her excitement faded and something else took its place. Something sharper, something guarded. I heard it first in her tone. The softness was gone. When I asked how she was doing, her answers became shorter. When I offered help, she brushed me off like I was interrupting. When I asked about her new boyfriend, she spoke as if every question was a criticism, even though I never gave her one. At first, I blamed myself. I told myself she was stressed. I told myself young adults pull away sometimes. I tried to be patient because that's what a father should do. But then the distancing began. She stopped calling. She stopped visiting. She stopped sending small updates about her day. And the worst part? She acted like it was normal. One afternoon, I asked if she wanted to come over for dinner. We used to do that almost every Sunday. She hesitated, then said, "He thinks I need to set better boundaries." I didn't understand. I didn't know what boundary I had crossed. I asked her gently what she meant, and she said, "Dad, I'm not a kid anymore. I need space." The way she said dad felt different, like it no longer meant what it used to. I ignored the first small disrespect. She canceled dinner at the last minute and didn't apologize. I brushed it off. Then she stopped replying to my messages for days. I told myself she was busy. Then she snapped at me for asking if she was okay. I told myself she was tired. Every time something stung, I found a reason to forgive it. Parents do that. We hold on longer than we should because we remember who they used to be, not who they're becoming. But I couldn't pretend I didn't notice how her boyfriend's presence seemed to sit between us like a wall. She mentioned him in ways that didn't feel natural, quoting him, defending him, using his words as if they were her own. And whenever I tried to connect the way we used to, she acted like I was crossing some invisible line someone else had drawn. Looking back, I can see the pattern clearly. Back then, I only felt the drift. Slow, quiet, steady. I didn't know it was the start of a gap that would one day feel like an ocean. Let me ask you something. Have you ever watched someone you love slowly change into someone you barely recognize? Silence doesn't arrive all at once. It grows. It moves slowly, like a shadow stretching across a room at the end of the day. I didn't notice it at first. I told myself she was busy, tired, preoccupied. I gave her space the way she said she needed. But space can turn into distance, and distance can turn into something colder, something that feels like being erased. It started with unanswered greetings. "Good morning, kiddo. Hope work went well. Let me know you got home safe." Simple things. Things any parent sends without thinking. Hours passed, then days. No answer. I told myself she must not have seen them. Phones glitch. People forget. Life gets busy. But the truth was quieter and sharper. She saw them. They just didn't matter enough to respond. When she did answer, her messages felt like someone holding the door mostly shut, leaving only a crack open. Fine. Busy. Can't talk. Sometimes she replied only when she needed something: money, advice, a ride, a signature. She always spoke politely in those moments, like switching on a light. The moment she got what she needed, the light went off again. I tried not to take it personally, but a parent feels these things. The shift wasn't just emotional. It was intentional. Over time, her excuses didn't line up. She'd say she was at work, but I'd hear traffic behind her. She'd say she was homesick, but her social media showed her out with friends. Once she said she left her phone at home, but her read receipts told a different story. Little inconsistencies became warnings I didn't want to accept. There were moments I felt like someone else was shaping her silence. Like the messages were being read before she answered. Like someone was telling her how to respond, or when to ignore me. She once texted, "I can't talk right now," even though she had just posted a picture of her dinner on her story. When I asked why she said she was busy, she snapped back, "Not everything is about you." I stared at that message for a long time. The words didn't sound like her. They didn't sound like the girl who used to ask me to stay on the phone when she walked home alone. They didn't sound like the young woman who once messaged me, "Dad, don't go to sleep yet. I want to tell you something." This version of her felt coached, pushed away from me one short reply at a time. The worst part was the waiting. Waiting for a call that didn't come. Waiting for an answer that never arrived. Waiting for a sign that I still mattered. I would sit at the edge of my bed some nights, phone in hand, watching the screen as if it might suddenly light up. I wasn't asking for much. Just a few words. Just proof she remembered I existed. But the silence kept spreading until it felt like a wall. One weekend, I finally tried calling instead of texting. She didn't pick up. I tried again. Same result. 5 minutes later, she sent a message. "Why are you calling so much?" "He says it's too much." "He says." Those 2 words explained everything I didn't want to believe. Someone else had a say in when I could talk to my own daughter. Someone else decided what she owed me. Someone else decided what I deserved. That realization didn't bring anger. Not at first. It brought a deep, aching loneliness. A pain that settled inside me like cold air. She wasn't just pulling away. She was being pulled, and I could feel myself losing her one unanswered message at a time. Tell me, at what point does silence become cruelty? The first call came early in the morning, before I had even finished my coffee. The number looked familiar, but I couldn't place it right away. When I answered, a woman introduced herself from the school where my daughter once volunteered on weekends. Her voice carried a mix of urgency and caution, the kind people use when they aren't sure how someone will react. "Mr. Reed, we've been trying to reach Emily. Are you still her emergency contact?" For a moment, I didn't know what to say. On paper, yes. In her life, no. I told the woman I hadn't heard from my daughter in a while, and she apologized as if the situation was my fault. She explained they needed confirmation for some paperwork, something minor. But the underlying concern was clear. They couldn't reach her. I promised I would try, even though I already knew how it would go. I sent a message anyway. No reply, no receipt, nothing. Later that week, the doctor's office called. This time it was a nurse I remembered meeting years ago. She said they'd attempted to contact Emily several times about a missed appointment and a change in her prescription. They hadn't heard back in weeks. "Is everything okay with her?" the nurse asked softly. I hesitated again. I didn't know what story to tell, because the truth felt too heavy to admit out loud. I was blocked by my own child. I told her I wasn't sure, and the nurse sounded worried. She said Emily hadn't updated any of her emergency contact forms. She still had me listed everywhere. My full name, my number, my address. It felt strange, knowing the world still saw me as the person who should be alerted if something went wrong, while my daughter no longer wanted me in her daily life. More calls followed. A billing office, a receptionist from another clinic, a community center trying to confirm her participation in a program she never mentioned. Each caller assumed I could reach her. Every voice carried the same confusion. "Mr. Reed, she isn't answering. Her voicemail is full. We've emailed several times. Is she all right?" The questions pressed against me until concern turned into a quiet fear. I realized something unsettling. Everyone could reach me, except her. Every institution still treated me as if I had access to her world. But I didn't. She had closed that door without warning, without explanation, without a second thought. And now, piece by piece, I was learning how deeply she had disconnected from the systems meant to protect her. One receptionist mentioned something that stuck with me longer than I wanted. She missed a follow-up we marked as important. We hoped an emergency contact could help. Important. Not optional. Not routine. Important. I hung up the phone and just sat there, staring at the wall. Fear crept in. Not the dramatic kind, but the slow, steady kind that crawls across the back of your mind and refuses to leave. What if she wasn't ignoring me out of anger? What if she was hiding something worse? What if the silence wasn't only about me? I decided to start writing things down. Dates, times, numbers, who called, what they said. I didn't know why at first. It was just instinct, like a parent storing pieces of a puzzle in case they mattered later. Every entry made her absence feel heavier. Every unanswered call from her made the gap between us feel wider. And every official voice asking for her made me feel like the only person trying to keep her from slipping through cracks she couldn't see. In those moments, I understood something painful. She had blocked me out emotionally, but life had not blocked me out of my responsibility for her. Tell me, should institutions notify emergency contacts sooner? There are moments in a parent's life when you stop listening to what your child says and start paying attention to what doesn't add up. That shift happened the day my daughter finally answered one of my calls after weeks of silence. Her voice was tight, as if she were speaking through clenched teeth. But I told myself it was a start. "Emily," I said gently, "I've been worried. Can we talk for a minute?" She exhaled sharply. "I'm fine, Dad. You always think something's wrong." But I had notes. Dates, times, calls from offices she ignored. I didn't want to corner her. I just wanted the truth. So I asked, "Did you miss your doctor's appointment last week?" Another pause. "No, I went." That wasn't what they told me. I kept my voice calm. "The clinic said they couldn't reach you. They must have dialed wrong. But they used the number on your file." She sighed again, louder this time. "Dad, can we not do this right now? You're stressing me out." Before I could answer, I heard a faint voice in the background. Male, low, sharp in tone. I couldn't make out the words, but I recognized the impact. Her tone changed instantly. I said, "I'm fine," she snapped. It wasn't her, not the daughter I knew. This voice was colder, rehearsed, defensive, as if she was repeating something someone else coached her to say. I tried again, softer. Did someone tell you not to talk to me?" She laughed, but it wasn't real. "No one controls me. Why would you even ask that?" Contradiction number 2. She said no one controlled her, but her replies came out stiff and unnatural, like she needed permission to keep talking. "I got a call from the school," I said carefully. "They said you never returned paperwork." "I did," she said too quickly. "But they've been trying to reach you." "I said I did, okay?" Another voice in the background, more forceful this time. A whispered instruction she tried to cover by shifting her phone. The sound tightened something in my chest. She was being steered, not supported. I wanted to ask her directly what was going on, but I knew pushing too hard would shut her down completely. Instead, I changed the subject. There was also something about a bill tied to my name. "Did you use my information recently?" Silence. A heavy, telling silence. "Dad," she said finally, "you're making a big deal out of nothing." But my name was on it. "It was an old form," she claimed. "It was dated last month." Another contradiction. Her story cracked at the edges, and every time she tried to patch it, the truth leaked out. I could hear her partner in the background again, closer this time. The tone wasn't comforting. It was corrective. She spoke afterward like someone scared to get the next line wrong. "Look, I'm just trying to live my life. I need space." "Space," I repeated quietly. "Or isolation?" Her breathing hitched. "Stop." The fear in her voice wasn't fear of me. It was fear of being overheard, fear of speaking out of turn, fear of revealing too much. "Emily," I whispered, "just tell me if you're safe." The line stayed quiet for several long seconds. Then she whispered back, barely audible, "I'm fine." But the tremor in her voice told me everything. Before I could ask more, the call ended. Not dropped. Ended. By her or by him, I couldn't tell. That night I spread out my notes on the table. Every contradiction, every inconsistency, every sudden shift in her tone. Every piece pointed to the same truth. This wasn't normal family tension. Something bigger, something dangerous, was surrounding her. And she was slipping into it without realizing how far she'd gone. I stared at the list and felt a slow fire build inside me. A father knows when a lie is covering something darker. Tell me, when did someone's lie finally make you read between the lines? The call that changed everything came on a gray afternoon. The kind where the sky feels heavy before rain. I thought it was another routine reminder from a clinic or a school. I had grown used to those. But when I answered, the voice on the other end carried a tone that made my stomach tighten. "Mr. Reed, this is Officer Howard with the County Welfare Department. We'd like to speak with you regarding several recent reports." Reports, plural. I sat down before my legs gave way. He explained that multiple institutions, schools, clinics, community programs, had flagged my daughter as unreachable despite serious attempts to contact her. They had all listed me as the emergency contact. They all assumed I could explain the silence. "Could we meet in person?" he asked. "We want to make sure we understand the full picture." When someone from the authorities speaks with that level of calm, you know the situation is larger than you realized. I agreed to meet them the next morning. 2 officials came. Officer Howard and a caseworker named Ms. Turner. She had a calm, steady presence, the kind people use when they deliver heavy information without making it sound like panic. They asked me to walk them through the last few months, every call, every message, every unanswered attempt to reach her. I told them what hurt the most. My own daughter had blocked my number. The moment the words left my mouth, I felt exposed, like admitting I had failed at something every parent hopes never to face. But neither of them judged me. They simply wrote it down, their faces tightening with concern. "How long has this been going on?" Ms. Turner asked. I gave them the dates. I told them about the sudden change in her tone after meeting her partner. I told them about the contradictions in her explanations, the excuses that didn't add up, the way her voice shifted when someone else was in the room. "She replies only when she wants something," I said quietly. "Otherwise, nothing." Officer Howard leaned forward. "And during the calls, you've heard someone influencing her responses?" "Yes," I said, "more than once." He nodded, writing carefully. "That can be a sign of coercive control." My heart clenched. Hearing it labeled by someone official made the reality hit harder. I wasn't imagining things. I wasn't being dramatic. Something dangerous was happening around my daughter. Then they began asking questions I never thought I'd have to answer about my own child. "Has she relied on your personal information? Recently? Has anyone contacted you regarding financial discrepancies? Has she withdrawn from trusted relationships? Has she shown fear, hesitation, or sudden changes in communication patterns?" Every question chipped away at the hope that this was just family tension. By the time I finished answering, the officials were exchanging looks. Quiet, serious, telling looks. Ms. Turner closed her notebook gently. "Mr. Reed, these patterns raise concern. At minimum, she may be experiencing neglect of essential duties. At worst, she may be under coercive influence." I felt the room tilt around me. Coercive influence. The words echoed like a bell ringing in an empty space. "We're opening a welfare note," she continued. "This doesn't mean charges or immediate action. It means her case will be monitored. If the pattern continues, we'll escalate." A welfare note. My daughter had fallen so far from herself that authorities now had a file on her well-being. I had come into the meeting afraid, but walking out, I carried something heavier than fear. Validation. Not the kind anyone wants, but the kind that tells you the nightmare you sensed in your bones was real. And with that validation came resolve. If the authorities were watching, then I wasn't alone anymore. I wasn't just a worried father shouting into a void. My concerns were now written in an official ledger, held by people who had the power to intervene if things worsened. For the first time in months, I felt a spark of direction. Not comfort, not hope, but purpose. Tell me, should authorities step in earlier? Courtrooms have a strange kind of silence, one that doesn't comfort, only waits. I felt that silence press on my shoulders the day everything finally came to light. I sat there with my hands folded, trying to steady them, while my daughter sat across the room beside the man who had slowly erased me from her life. She wouldn't look at me. Not once. The judge called the room to order, and the air shifted. Months of unanswered calls, contradictory stories, and official reports had led to this moment. I had told the truth to every investigator who knocked on my door. Now, that truth was about to be read aloud. The state's attorney began with the simplest piece of evidence: the pattern of blocked calls. They laid out phone records showing every time I tried to reach my daughter and how each attempt was shut out. The timeline aligned perfectly with the days institutions tried contacting her about missed obligations. "Your Honor," the attorney said, "we believe these communication barriers were intentionally created to isolate Ms. Reed from her support system." My daughter shifted in her seat, but still wouldn't look at me. Next came the financial documents. That part felt like a punch to the chest. My name had appeared on several recent applications, forms I had never seen, signatures I had never written. The handwriting matched, hers. But the timing revealed something worse. Submissions made right after nights I heard her partner whispering instructions in the background. The investigator explained that coercive control often hides behind borrowed identities, silent pressure, and emotional dependence. The room listened in grim stillness as each fact was laid out like a stone placed gently on a grave. When the judge asked if my daughter had anything to say, she finally raised her head. But the face she showed wasn't the child I raised. It was someone defensive, cornered, angry. "He's making it sound worse than it is," she said, pointing at me as if I were the cause of all this. "I'm an adult. I made my own choices. He's always trying to control everything." The judge held up a hand. "Ms. Reed, the evidence shows your partner applied for credit using your father's information. It also shows he consistently intercepted calls meant for you. Do you deny that?" Her voice cracked. He was helping." "It wasn't help. It was control. The kind that tightens slowly, so the person inside it doesn't notice until they can't move." The partner was ordered to stand. His expression hardened, but he kept his chin high, as if daring the judge to challenge him. The judge didn't hesitate. "Sir, your involvement in isolating Ms. Reed from her parent, alongside misuse of identity information, is serious. Restrictions will be placed on your contact with her during the investigation. You are also prohibited from handling any documents involving Mr. Reed's name." Those words finally made my daughter look up. But the look wasn't warm. It was full of confusion, fear, and something that tore at me. Blame. She whispered, "Dad, why are you doing this?" The question nearly broke me. She couldn't see that I hadn't dragged her into court. Her own silence had. Her partner's manipulation had. The lies had. All I had done was tell the truth to the people who finally asked for it. The judge concluded the session with a statement that hit the room harder than any gavel. Parent alienation, especially of an elder parent, poses serious risks. The court acknowledges harm was done, and further monitoring is required. Vindication should have felt like relief. Instead, it felt like standing in the ruins of something I spent a lifetime building. The court had seen the truth. They had recognized the damage. They had taken steps to protect me. But nothing in that courtroom could give me back my daughter's warmth. Tell me, do you think the judgment was enough? There comes a moment in every parent's life when love demands something harder than holding on. It demands letting go. After the court hearing, after the files were closed for the time being, after the judge's words settled into the quiet of my home, I realized I had reached that moment. I had spent months trying to reach my daughter, months trying to pull her out of a shadow that refused to release her. But in the end, she stepped farther into it, and I was left standing alone in the doorway. I didn't choose the distance between us, but I chose what I would do with it. I stopped waiting for messages that never came. I stopped checking my phone for missed calls that would never appear. I stopped replaying old conversations in my head, trying to figure out the exact moment she drifted away. Those habits had become a kind of quiet torture, and I knew I couldn't carry them any longer. Instead, I started building a life around what remained, me. At first, it felt strange. Empty mornings, long afternoons, silence that no longer held hope, only truth. But over time, the silence became a place I could breathe. I created routines that grounded me. Morning walks before the neighborhood woke up. Evenings spent reading or tending to the small garden behind my house. I joined a community group at the senior center. Not because I wanted company, but because I needed to remember that I still belonged somewhere. The people there didn't ask about my daughter. They didn't know my story unless I chose to share it. They saw me as I was. not as the father abandoned by his own child. In that simple acceptance, I found something close to peace. Of course, the memories still came. I would think about the nights I carried her to bed when she fell asleep in the car. The mornings she ran into the kitchen with school papers she wanted me to sign. The way her hand slipped into mine when she was small, trusting me without question. Losing that kind of connection isn't something time erases. It simply teaches you how to live around the empty place it leaves behind. I learned to accept that the girl I raised and the woman she became were no longer the same person. Somewhere along the way, fear, influence, and bitterness reshaped her into someone who saw me as an enemy. It took time, more time than I cared to admit. But I finally understood that loving her didn't mean allowing myself to be wounded again and again. Distance, painful as it was, became a form of protection. For her, and for me. There are moments, though. Quiet, ordinary moments. When I imagine a different future. I imagine her children, if she ever has them, asking about the man in the old photos. I imagine them paging through albums she never bothered to take with her, seeing the life I gave her, the home she grew up in, the father who never stopped caring even when she stopped believing it. And I know one day, truth has a way of finding its way to the next generation, even when the bridge between two people collapses. This past Thanksgiving, I made a decision. Instead of setting a place for her out of habit, I set one for myself, my own dignity, my own peace. I lit a candle not to remember what I lost, but to honor what I refused to surrender, my sense of worth. As I sat at that quiet table, I realized something simple and freeing. I cannot control her choices, but I can control the way I live the rest of my days, and I choose to live them with dignity, boundaries, and a heart that no longer bends until it breaks. Tell me, what do elders truly deserve in their final years?